our Mayor Pro Tem, Aaron Rennick, in the back, matching shirt. We have Melissa Joseph up here in the front, Alderwoman. We have our City Administrator, Gilbert Sullis. And behind in the yellow shirt back there is Robert Quintero. He's our Director of Development. So we're just really excited for y'all to be here. And I am going to turn this over to Craig Vance with WGIPOA, and he's going to run the show for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and congratulations again on your new job. Okay, thanks everybody for being here, coming out in this weather. It's apropos that we have weather like this as we discuss how to prepare for a hurricane. One lesson learned this morning, the power is out, or was out this morning until about 20 minutes ago, and the generator didn't crank on. And so Gilbert got up there and was working on it, pulled the air filter, cranked right up. So even though we have a generator, it didn't operate. So again, good drill that be prepared always. So you never know what's going to happen. Thank you to the City of Jamaica Beach for getting everything set up and prepared. Thank you for all of our speakers for braving the conditions and getting out here. A lot of valuable information from a lot of experienced people and leaders in the community. So with that said, let's get going. I think most of you have an agenda. If you don't, we have some extras. So our first speaker we're going to call up is our State Representative, Terry Leo Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you all for turning out on this, any day's a good day on the beach, right? Even when it's raining, I think. So it's so good to be home and hear the waves, honestly. So we passed a lot of emergency type legislation that had to do with disasters. So I'm going to kind of briefly discuss it. If you want more in-depth conversation, I'll stay and you can ask me afterwards. But we have quite a bit, so that I was just going to run through those since probably other focus is on hurricane preparedness. So just so you know, the city absolutely helped me with this bill. This was a bill that, I don't know if you remember the situation in Houston when Beryl came through and the county judge decided that she would use that disaster as a chance to raise taxes without having to go back for voter approval. So there was a bill this session. It was very, very difficult. Sally Bacco really helped with the city of Galveston on trying to come up with some kind of compromise language. Senator Larry Taylor had made that piece of legislation in particular for like when an Ike happened. And so it was a really good piece of the legislation because obviously when you have whole homes missing, like on Bolivar Peninsula, and you have that degree of catastrophe, you are not going to be able to collect revenues, and although you need a lot of revenue to do it. And I kind of fixed the part where the city can now go and borrow money without the bond star rating during a disaster last session. But this was kind of the companion piece that Senator Taylor had worked on. It was a good piece of legislation, but they kind of ruined it for all. So they were going to just take that just wipe that out. And so I was like, but for cities like mine, they can't do that. And luckily, West Texas had, well, not luckily, but they had the experience of going through, a catastrophe with the fires. So they were of the same mindset that, well, when something burns completely to the ground, what are you going to do on property taxes? And are you going to raise taxes and use that as an opportunity to go back to your voters? So we did get we did save that bill. It's not as good as it was when Senator Taylor initially had it, but the city of Galveston really helped with language, and so we do have a qualifier on there on debris and debris removal. So it will be based on the amount of debris removal, whether or not you can maintain that at the lower tax rate. So anyway, so that was a good move. It's not as good as it was. On the Gulf Coast Protection and Recovery District, we're still moving forward with that. Representative Dennis Paul and myself had a bill that would create the depository. So now we have a place to hopefully put all of the money coming from the federal government, from the state, for the various different projects that will start with phase 1. We are nearing that very quickly, and so hopefully Randy Weber will help us get some federal funding in there as well. I know he's working really hard on that. But the first phase will be reconstruction of the dunes and beach renourishment, creating a double dune system for both the West End and our Bolivar Peninsula. So we're nearing that point, and that will help, again, with our storm disasters. We did have a good bill that we will run through the Texas Department of Emergency Management for first responders. Sometimes we don't think about that, when they're on the scene, especially when there's a fatality involved, that those first responders have to see everything. And sometimes those images stay with them, and they have mental health issues, just like all of us would if we had to go in and go out. And catastrophe like Ike is just wearing on you, seeing people in just utter devastation over and over and over again. So we create a system of, it's called peer-to-peer support, and they will have trained individuals that will be able to train and help our first responders should they need it if they are having a mental health crisis in a really difficult time dealing with a major hurricane disaster. Let me see. I was also a author with Lacey Hall on this bill to create a list of priority facilities for electric utilities during disasters. So we put assisted living, regional airports, fire stations, all of those things will have priority restoration. So those things were not on the list. We already had like hospitals, but we forget about our assisted living homes and what it's like to be in there possibly where you can't move and you don't have air conditioning and all of those different things with medically fragile people. Then let me see, we had the establishment of rural infrastructure disaster recovery program. It doesn't really affect us here, but it will in my other county in Chambers County, where sometimes we forget the rural areas do not have the equipment, they don't have the personnel, they don't have all of that to deal when they have a major catastrophe. We're very fortunate, and we share resources, which is really nice. Jamaica Beach, when you guys get hit, people come here and help you, but you also go and help others. So sometimes that's absent in the rural area. TWIA, we're still working on TWIA. We created a situation where we hope we'll save ratepayers money in the end, where they can borrow money from a state in a major disaster. Right now they do like public securities and they do all of those things. But we also put into law that they're going to have to use their reserves first before they go borrow money, because every time they borrow money, that's on us. And so hopefully that will lower rates a little bit. I don't know. I mean, Dave and I, after Barrel, we're just like, should we even do TWIA anymore? I mean, we are in the same frustration spot as you guys. So, okay, and then we have another one on emergency operation plans for operation of battery energy storage facilities, providing administrative penalties. So, a lot of times flooding and hurricanes are going to eventually mess with, we have more and more battery storage facilities popping up that create fires when they're wet. And so creating a process and procedure of how you maintain that equipment, how you protect that equipment from major disasters. We have another one on which will affect like Texas A&M and UTMB, where we are requiring higher education to establish policies regarding timely issuance of emergency notifications to their students. So sometimes, students don't pay attention like we do. We think we would, but sometimes they're busy with their social media and whatnot, and they're not really paying attention to like, you need to leave this, you need to get out of here, especially when we have like Pelican Island Bridge. We have things that will bar people, and even on the island, I tell people on Bolivar they get upset because they can't get through 87, but they've been told for 3 days it's coming, you need to get off. You should not stay here, and people still don't leave, and it's very frustrating because even on the island, once that causeway is closed, once those roads flooded to the causeway, and you can't get over the causeway may be clear to everybody else, but if the roads aren't put into the causeway, you can't leave either. So we're all kind of in the same boat when that happens. Flood infrastructure. We spent a lot of money on water this session. We don't want water. We want to get rid of water. So included in those bills are some more things on flooding and infrastructure monies and different grants that are available to cities and counties. We had a lot of legislation, and we probably are halfway there on making sure that we have a secure grid and protecting that from weather-related events. We added EMS, we created some of the resiliencies around surrounding certain municipalities, ours, Houston area for one, but adding EMS, communication, water, sewer, healthcare, banks, energy, and transportation. Those are all things that go down in a major disaster that we don't really think about until you actually need electricity or need the water or whatever. So we did put some of that resilience protection into the grid. We created what's called a Grid Security Council. So they'll do twofold. They'll try to come up with emergency management plans and systems and put those in place, and protection things of current equipment and how often that needs to be inspected for not just hurricane disasters, but fire, any kind of natural disaster as well, but also a cyber attack. So they'll be doing two different things on that Grid Security Council. Let me see. Okay, we also have a provision, or we passed a law that will give you a refund payment on your taxes on a catastrophe. So like, let's say your property was severely damaged. So you can go in and you can get a temporary exemption from your property taxes on that year if it's related to, your residence homestead. So that will be something helpful for us should we need it in the time of plenty. So, let me see. Oh, average daily attendance. We have fixed that in that average daily attendance will be preserved during a disaster. So the state will step in and help school districts in a disaster area where you may lose attendance. Like after we lost, I think more than half of our police force. We lost a lot of residents that just up and left and, just didn't stay. And that impacts our school district and the amount of money that they take in. So average daily attendance monies will be preserved after a disaster if you are one of those areas hit, so that doesn't hurt your school district monies. We also are going to make sure that hospitals submit plans for emergency operations and also nursing homes, so that they have an emergency plan, like when you have to reroute patients and where are they going to go, and all different levels of care. So that will be good. And they will have to practice on those plans and do drills and whatnot, so that they know how to get patients out when they can and where they're going to go. We did have, same thing with our school districts that also have part of our property tax equation, is that same disaster removal was left in, but it would be related to the amount of debris removal that your city is going to ensue. So we did that also for your school taxes. Let's see. Oh, this was a big deal. We are going to make sure that they have regular and routine inspected poles and wires throughout the year, so that when we do hit a disaster, we don't have compromised electric poles, we don't have compromised, transmission stations, wherever it is. They're going to have to do regular inspections on poles and wires and make sure that they have structural integrity to get through a storm. And so that will be mainly concentrating on both the transmission and the distribution. And then, let me see, we've got, we have a financing mechanism for electric utilities also. If they have lost more than $50 million a year, obviously that gets passed off to the tax, or to the ratepayers. So we have a grant program where if that happens in your area, that electric utility company can borrow money from the state and not the bank, since we right now are sitting on a huge surplus. So we can use some of that surplus to create a grant program to kind of try to relieve it, so that following the disaster, that's not put on you as a resident. let's see, it talks about the planned exercises. Let me see. There's one more thing I wanted to mention. Oh, we did get the generators added to assistant living facilities too. So I know CenterPoint had a grant program. I know Entergy in Chambers County and on the Lower Peninsula has been really great about that. So, but that will help them as well. There's one more thing, and I can't remember what it was, so I will skip it. I think that was it. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, those are some of the key pieces that we pass for coastal communities and, you know, just disaster prone in an area where it just really wipes out and you're starting back from square one. So, but thank you all for sending me. Thank you. It was an honor and a privilege to serve you and to be involved in that. And every day I walk in, it doesn't get old. I come into that peak dome and it's like, wow, I'm part of history. And so I guess when that feeling goes away, I should just come home and retire for good. But for right now, it's just really exciting, and I find it a huge challenge. But we passed a lot of good bills this session, and of course we passed some bad ones too. But there's a few stinkers in there. But I'd love to come and talk to you about legislation in general at some time for WGIPOA. Anyway, thank you very much.
All right, Terry, thank you so much for all you do. It sounds like a very, very busy session, so thanks for representing us so well. Okay, our next speaker, Galveston Mayor, Mr. Craig Brown.
Good morning, everyone. It's fitting weather out there to talk about hurricane preparedness. You may notice I'm carrying this umbrella around. I've lost so many umbrellas, so I just keep hanging on to it so I don't leave it here. It's going to be a busy hurricane season they're predicting for this coming year. In 2024, we set some records. They had the earliest Cat 5 hurricane in history of keeping record of these hurricanes happen in 2024. And we had 2 hurricanes hit the western coast of Florida, which is somewhat unheard of. If you follow these hurricanes, you don't see that so often. So this year is going to be a busy year, and the city of Galveston is prepared. We employ 2 private weather services that we monitor, and we pay attention to the National Weather Service, of course. We use our private services to help us with our pre-planning and making decisions ahead of time. We even have a system that runs off of an AI that is out of London that we look at, which, by the way, last year was extremely accurate. I was amazed on how this AI system worked. But we monitor those, but rest assured, we make our decisions based on the National Weather Service, and that's something that we keep in touch with. I would say, and I think everyone in the audience probably knows this, but when we put out information from the city of Galveston, please monitor that information that comes from the city officially. In Barrow, we had a ton of information coming out on social media. Almost looked like it was coming from the city, but it did not, and it misled a lot of people. So please keep an eye on the official sites of the city of Galveston. That's very important. I have a lot of these meetings that I go to, and I have been in a lot of these here coming up in the last month or so. And I start the entire presentation and I say to everybody in the audience, I say that if you don't think that you can get by without any electricity for at least a week, you need to make plans to leave this island. It's as simple as that. The loss of electricity is probably that energy source that we get the most complaints about. Centerpoint, and I think Centerpoint Ryan's probably here, a member of Centerpoint. Hey, Ryan. He'll be mentioning that coming up. They do an exceptional job trying to get things running. But I would say that if you don't think you can survive without electricity for about a week, You need to make plans to leave this island if a storm approaches. And one last comment, I want to talk about mandatory evacuation calls. We take that very seriously here at the city. It's not something we take lightly. A lot of things happen if we have a mandatory evacuation. Our last mandatory evacuation was Hurricane Laura, for those that may remember that. We have to give it, we make that call usually within 72 hours before the landfall of a storm. We have to do that for a number of reasons, but one of them is with our contracts with TDM, making sure we have time to get the buses down here and move those that don't have facilities or a way of getting off the island that we can provide that. For the first time this year, the state of Texas has informed UTMB that if we call an evacuation in Galveston, UTMB's got to evacuate. That's a major exercise over there. So I want you to know that we don't take the mandatory calls for evacuation lightly. If for some reason we do make that call, please take that very seriously. That means that we have kind of gone through all of our other alternatives, and we feel it really affects the life and public safety of our citizens here on this island, so take that seriously. I'm going to keep it short. I hope that we meet after this season. We smile, we wish each other a happy Thanksgiving, and we don't have any storms to talk about. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker is with Galveston County, our County Commissioner, Mr. Joe Giusti.
Do I need the mic? What? Okay. It echoes in here quite a bit. I'm Joe Giusti, Precinct 2 County Commissioner. This is Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is now a coastal precinct. I've got the entire coast, about High Island, San Luis Pass, and go up and pretty much south of Texas Avenue is mine. And we're blessed in Galveston County because you've got so many great people here that work for the county, that are part of the state, that our Office of Emergency Management in Galveston County is up on 646 North, and we're housed with the National Weather Service, the 911 District, the CERT team, and a couple other folks that are, the Sheriff's Office has a little office in there. But it's such a cohesive unit. I mean, being right next door to the National Weather Service in the same building, come on, how many people get to do that? Not many, but we do. Galveston County has always responded well to storms, but it all depends on you. Be prepared. I can't tell you enough to be prepared. You've got professionals that are going to tell you here today how to be prepared. Listen to them. Take the books and the literature that's on these tables and utilize it. Don't just, a lot of people, ooh, that's pretty cool. And then they'll throw it down and not do anything till the storm comes and they're running around like a chicken with the head cut off. And wondering, what do I do? What do I do? Well, take that book and start now if you haven't already done it. You should have done it. Personally, I don't really leave because I'm kind of committed to being here. But my wife and family, I bought an RV a few years ago. And you know what I do? All summer long, I take and park it. $50 a month at an RV park that stores them. And they even have a concierge service to where I can call and say, hey, put me on the spot. And they'll move it to where she doesn't have to have my truck to put it there. And so it's you know, if you can afford to do something like that, please do it. When these folks tell you to leave, please leave. Don't beat around the bush, him on where you're going to go. Have that in your plans. Because I can tell you a story that if you've been here before, when I had this talk, I'll repeat it because it's important. I was with Galveston PD for several years, and I retired a long time ago. And I was also part of another group that had something to do with those guys during Ike. And I was at the San Luis, at the headquarters there, where they all go and gather up. Dispatch was there. I was wandering through the operations in there, and phone calls were coming in from Bolivar. Help me, help me, help me. I'm trying to remember the name. I'm trying to remember the name of the island they took their family, they found their bodies on later. There was no way. Once the storm is coming, we're not getting to you. Plain and simple, it's not going to happen. You can call on the phone and cry all you want, it's not going to happen. So if you've got any smarts about you at all, and if I'm offending somebody, sorry. I know us first responders, we're not that smart, we can't live. But if you have any smarts at all and they call an evacuation, you will leave, plain and simple. End of story. All I got to say.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Okay, next up, we've got our city, start over, District 6 Councilwoman, Miss Marie Robb.
Wow, I don't know how you follow the mic drop. But I'm Marie Robb. I'm the District 6 City Council member as well as the Mayor Pro Tem of Galveston. And I would like to personally thank Terry for everything she did this session and bringing bills forward, as well as helping us not bring bills forward that we didn't want to see. But having spent more time up there this year, she did an incredible job. And I was with Steve Monastery the other day from the governor's office, and they just couldn't compliment her enough. So thank you, Terry. But along with what everyone else says, this is hurricane season. We have been so lucky the last couple years, even though we did get hit by Alberto, and then Burl took us by surprise. You cannot be prepared enough. And we deal with two issues. We deal with people who live here evacuating, and then we deal with renters that don't have a clue about evacuations. If you live on the bayside, you know that the water is going to raise over your dock 3-4 feet. But if you're a renter, you're thinking, I'm going to die, I'm going to drown. So we need to make sure that we get that message out to the people who are renting as well as our residents. And this year will be a little bit different when it comes to voluntary as well as mandatory, because I believe, and Brian will touch on this, we're going to have to call it a little earlier, being that our lifelong project 45 is under repair. The soonest they would be able to do contraflow would be League City. And we all know what it's like when there's even one lane closed. It gets backed up to East Beach. So there will be some earlier calls than previously. But just remember, when you're getting and get a plan together, it's you, it's your pets. Remember your medicine. Remember to bring some snacks and some food, or especially when you're coming back to your house, make sure you have things that are in cans or things that don't require electricity. But also with your pets, make sure you bring their medicines as well. I know that happened to me, and I had 2 dogs that were on medication. I lost my house at night. I ended up in Austin as I made my way back to Galveston, and I didn't think to bring their medicine. So make sure you prepare, make your list early. Make sure you bring your insurance documents with you. Take pictures of the things in your house, because You never know, it may or may not be there. But most of all, be prepared, and I know for those of us who have lived here for a while, we are ready for future hurricanes, but you never know what might happen and what might happen fast. So thank you all and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Maria. We appreciate it. Okay, next we have our Galveston City Manager, Mr. Brian Maxwell.
Howdy. I bought this jersey before. I thought we were going to the College World Series. We did, but I'm not going to stop wearing it. Am I right, Rob? I'm not a 2%. So appreciate it. Thank you all for having me here today. This will be my 32nd hurricane season working in local government here on the coast. So I'd like to say we've seen it all, but it seems like every single one of them is just a little bit different. So we have to be prepared for what will come. Councilmember Rob touched on one of the biggest challenges we're going to have this year. And when you leave Galveston now, you're going to notice that you're actually traveling on the pier road. And if you look to your left, you're going to see you're anywhere from 46 feet below what was the main lane. The main lane will actually be higher than the finish. But for the next couple of hurricane seasons, and I'm being optimistic when I say a couple, that is going to greatly impact our time frame in calling evacuation. I'd like to tell you that it's 12 hours, we don't know. Because every storm approaches different, every storm has different tidal profiles. We're going to rely on them to tell us what those tidal profiles are going to be and when we need to get people out. But where we've had the luxury in the past of if you can get to the causeway, as the mayor mentioned, you can get out. That may not necessarily be the case once you get to the other side of the causeway. So we're going to be monitoring this very closely. Mayor touched on we have a couple of private weather services. We also use some AI. AI will replace what used to be the VR service, the Bill Reed service that we used to have. But he's still around to help us as well. We've got a lot going on. Our emergency management group has been probably more active in the spring than they've ever been with all that weather we've had this year. My grandma used to say if we have a really rainy spring like this, it usually means we're not going to have a hurricane. So we're counting on her accuracy this year. But beyond that, I want to thank everybody for their participation. It's a rainy day today. We got a little test run. For drama, Ryan had the power cut off and all that kind of stuff. He likes to do that kind of stuff. But it all worked out, and we appreciate y'all being here. But the main thing in the message, everybody's going to say the same thing. Stay aware. Follow legitimate media sources for your information. The city of Galveston has its full complement of social media, text, phone, and all those things that we'll be sending out notifications. Don't think we're crazy. Like I said, if it comes out a little early because we're going to be monitoring it a little hypersensitive due to the compromised evacuation routes. Thank you guys. Happy Father's Day to all the dads that are in the room or that are listening. And I hope everybody has a safe and happy weekend. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Brian. Okay, our next section here is going to be the hurricane planning and evacuation. So the points of this are going to be kind of, here's what's coming potentially, and here's what to do to be prepared when that happens. So our first speaker for this section is going to be Mr. Bill Reed. He's the former National Director of the National Hurricane Center. Years and years and years of experience, and he's here with some great news about no storms ever again in Galveston.
Run that guy for office, man. You talk about artificial intelligence, I talk about real ignorance. But before I get that, I was actually going to talk about, I want to piggyback on the challenge we have approaching hurricane that might require an evacuation of going out to 72 hours. Remember in Ike, the people on the Bolivar were trapped 24 hours before the city. So we usually got 48 hours on unprotected parts of the burial grounds. Another thing is, since 2017, starting with Harvey, there have been 11 Category 3, 4, or 5 hurricanes make landfall in the Gulf of Mexico. None of those were hurricanes 72 hours before landfall. Some of them were hurricanes till 36 hours before landfall, and Harvey was about a 24-hour lead time on that. So the decisions are going to have to be made when there's tremendous uncertainty on the intensity, or the artificial intelligence that's making waves in the whole forecasting world, not just the weather, is very good at improving our track forecast at longer lead time, which is great, because that's been an ongoing challenge for forecasters, is trying to push that envelope out 7 days, and we never quite got the skill. I think the AI is going to get us there rather quickly now. But the intensity factor, AI is having as much problem with intensity as the humans and the dynamic models. So you got work to do on that in many regards. So anyway, I was asked to give a little snapshot of what it was like at the Hurricane Center. So first, a little of my background. I had a 40-year career in public service, 5 years active duty in the Navy, and then 35 with the National Weather Service. Bounced around playing forecaster for a good chunk of it, then somebody was crazy enough to make the manager of the Luke City office at the time we were installing radars. Because my expertise is really, it's not hurricane, believe it or not, it's severe weather like this and how to use a radar to detect and warn for it. And it was a great challenge to learn how to use that in our environment. Obviously, any tropical thing came along, I find stuff. Radars developed in Oklahoma and somebody in Colorado. And the kind of storms we have today aren't really the same thing as happens up there. So we developed our own techniques, which is a lot of fun. I think my biggest accomplishment running your office here was collaborating with Jim Yarborough at the Joint County Emergency Management and the Weather Office. That building was built to withstand the Category 5. The whole county will be gone and we just monitor it there. It's a really nice building. It's built to Florida standards plus. And it's still the only one to this day. No other jurisdiction's been able to replicate what we pulled off in that. Okay, Hurricane Center. I was getting ready to retire and going to consultant in 2007. And Max Mayfield, who was run through the ringer in his tenure as director of major hurricanes, and I had similar philosophies on that. And he announced his retirement and called me up and said, would you consider putting in for my job? And once I found the defibrillator and got it to work, I said, sure, why not? I'll call that my first retirement job. So lo and behold, I got it. I spent 5 years there, summer of 2007 through 2012, which at 40 years. Excited. I'm not going to even manage dogs anymore. I'm going to go through weather and stuff again. So the operation there, or everybody like to call me the chief hurricane forecaster. I keep reminding them, I'm the director. My job is management. And in place needed management because they put scientists in charge of it for like 4 or 5 iterations before I got there. And there's a whole lot of management stuff needed to be squared away. But we've got 12 hurricane specialists or forecasters. They're the best in the country, maybe in the world, at doing what they do. Most of them have PhDs from universities that teach tropical meteorology. And before they become specialists, they have anywhere from 10 to 20 years of forecasting experience in the realm of hurricane specialists. My job, if we had a storm come up, the routine there, as some of you probably already know, is every 6 hours, 4 a.m., 4 p.m., 10 a.m., 10 p.m. our time, a new forecast is put out. And there's a primary reason behind that. That is when the cycle starts when new data starts becoming available. They spend 4 of those 6 hours ingesting and analyzing all the new data, all the new model stuff, and using their techniques to come up with a first best update to the forecast. Then the next 2 hours are coordinating with other federal agencies and the forecast offices internally. We also have a the East Pacific hurricanes also. There's a lot of coordination to make the final product fit what everybody wanted, and products would go out. Products would go out. At that time, what my job was, we had a bank of, our whole training room was turned into a media center, and there was a production studio. They had all kinds of equipment, and I had no idea how it works, but my job was to stand in front of the big screen TV with the hurricane standing on it and answer media questions about the storm. And every morning, every day at noon, and every day at 6 p.m., I had to lead a discussion in a secure room. We turned a storage closet into a secure communication center. And we have Fire and Homeland Security, FEMA, Weather Service headquarters, and usually the White House Situation Room. Behind the walls of the White House Situation Room, it looks like New York City. You have all these workstations, and various experts are in there doing the coordination. That's usually who you're talking to, but the big storms like Gustav, Ike, and Irene while I was there, the president himself would be involved with it. Both W. Bush and Obama took the hurricane problem real seriously. Remember, W. got in trouble with how Katrina was handled. They had a whole different attitude by the time I came around what his role was in hurricanes. And, I got to kind of know that. They actually had me come up and do a preseason briefing for the cabinet and all this. I was in water way over my head, but I'll cherish those memories. But, okay, my most memorable thing at the Hurricane Center was naturally Hurricane Ida. We moved over there, and we had just bought a new house in Lake City. My wife's knees were bad. I didn't like schlepping stuff upstairs. We've got a one-story house, supposedly downsized. So we crammed 2,500 square feet of stuff into a 1,900 square foot house in your end. And my son was recently graduated from his college days and was just starting out. His lease was ending on his apartment. I made a deal I couldn't refuse. So I'm not going to sell this house anymore. We just bought it. Well, things killing. We'll lose that. We try to sell it now. Plus, we're going to come back here when we retire. We'll let you live here, and I'll pay the mortgage if you just pay your bills for staying here. And if something breaks, let me know. I'll pay for it. Don't worry about it. So anyway, Ike comes along, and you're sure nothing's any good here. So now I've got skin in the game. I'm sitting there in Miami, high and dry, and concerned with that. And I don't know, it was about midnight or 1 a.m. as they're on the west side of Lake City, they're in the western eye wall of the storm. I keep the landline because power goes out, the landline still will work. That's become a lost figment there, but that gives you a key. These things don't work with the hood. I couldn't get cell service after Barrel for 3 days. It's crazy. But anyway, I call the house, and the young lady answers the phone and says, "Ooh, Jonathan, you're doing good." You know, and I asked her, "Can I speak to Jonathan?" And he said, "Oh, he went to sleep about an hour ago." Boy, does not have the meteorology gene. There's no doubt about it. There's no way I was going to ever sleep through a landfall hurricane. But at the time, he was working for Tia down at the boardwalk in Kima. And most of his staff that he had with him lived in old rentals or mobile homes in like Bay Cliff, San Leon, and that area. And he convinced them to come to our house because it was built to code plus. It had 130 mile an hour, probably the only 130 mile an hour residents in Lake City, just because they wanted that extra thing in there. So he had 12 people right this morning. House didn't find him. He said it took him about 2 hours with 3 other guys and a 12-pack of Miller Lite to get the fence back up. Pretty good. The other story about Ike was a much more serious one. In my routine as director, once a storm made landfall, it always drove me nuts because my job at the weather office here, once a storm made landfall, we were busy with it all day out for the next 12 hours putting out warnings and stuff. But at the Hurricane Center, we hand off we don't do the local warning. We don't have that expertise, so it's handed off to the local office. We go on to the next storm. All the media scurries away after landfall because the story isn't us anymore. So I had to let the air out of and air mattress, they sleep in the office where the land falls, and I was getting ready to go, and a FEMA rep that was embedded in the office tapped me on the shoulder and said, now we have a request from Chertoff, who's the name of the Secretary of Homeland Security, for a briefing at 7 a.m. In your mattress, and get there, briefing comes up, and you have these video screens that show who's on the video. There's only 3 screens lit up, a FEMA administrator on one, nobody else in the room. Chertoff in his office, which and it was big, but there was no one else in that either. In the White House Situation Room, there was the Secretary of the Treasury, who I recognize, and 3 other bald white guys who I don't know to this day. I get the briefing, and I asked, Mr. President, do you have any questions? And he said, yes, what do you think happened? What do you think the status is of the ship channel and the petrochemical complex in your area in Galveston going in? And only because I had worked here the previous 15 years, I could give them a pretty good guess of what I thought. But I basically said, I think all the petrochem can handle it's below the tide level of the storm, and they can handle much more wind than I provided. And I don't know about the ship channel, but we can find out pretty quick. Any more questions? And he said, no, thanks, and that was the end of the call. Went home. Didn't know why we had that call. What happened the Monday after Ike? The financial crash. 2 weeks before Gustav had hit New Orleans, southeast Louisiana, and most of their transportation capability for getting product out of the area was compromised by Gustav. So the product wasn't going from there to the East Coast, and it was being rerouted out of the Houston area. If the Houston area was unable to continue providing product, the estimate was they had 3 days supply of fuel for the East Coast. And after that, the run-up prices would be unbelievable, and the estimates they were using were $10 a gallon. That on top of the financial crash. So that's how important sometimes these kind of calls are to weather people. And my decisions were a lot easier than theirs to be staring at on the satellite. That was real. The most memorable storm other than that is the floods. My whole career has been floods. My first job as a forecaster in San Antonio in 1978, Tropical Storm Amelia. I was never remembered for its wind. Dropped 48 inches of rain over Kerrville and flooded. There was more water going down the Guadalupe the day after that storm than was going past the arches in St. Louis on the Mississippi. And a normal summer day, you can not get your knees wet when you cross the Guadalupe up there. The hydrologist told me, remember this one, you'll never see one like it again. And I said, okay. So 1 year later, guess what happens? Claudette, right up the road now, 43 inches in 24 hours. It's still a 24-hour record in the United States for total rainfall. Then we had Allison, and I no longer believed it. I'll never see these again. And sure enough, after I retired, we had Harvey. And Harvey will probably be one of the ones I'll never forget. Because our house is outside the so-called 500-year elevation, and we had water on the porch, and another 1 inch of rising occurred, and we were coming through seep holes into the slab, over the slab, and I'd be yanking sheetrock and everybody else. So the lesson on that is, if you see a storm stalling, you can almost guarantee somewhere is going to flood. You just have to know that's and this is the part of the country where that's most likely to happen. Okay, seasonal forecast. I'm not a big fan of, I'll finish with that, but for this year, it's like about 20 different entities now that make seasonal forecasts, and they're all about the same. I averaged them, and it's somewhere around 17 named storms, 10 hurricanes, and 4 that would be major. You can plus or minus the hurricanes by 2 and the majors by 1. You get the statistical range on that. That's slightly more than the long-term average. We don't have El Nino, which really cuts them back. And we don't have a La Nina, which is associated with more storms. We have a neutral pattern that I like to call La Nina. It's not anything. And the people say, oh good, we don't have La Nina with La Nina and those storms. There are more hurricane landfalls since 1950 on the Texas coast in La Nina than there have been in La Nina. I don't know why. I just discovered that a year ago looking at the data. There's not that, the big factor in that part of the forecast, that component of the seasonal forecast is El Nino. El Nino really knocks, the stronger the El Nino, the more it knocks back on the number of hurricanes again. So the other two are almost always typically active. The other factor that you look for is how warm is the tropical ocean. And in the last 2 years, it was at record levels, never seen it before. And then starting this winter, the Atlantic from the eastern islands of the Caribbean to Africa have been cooling off. They're almost down to normal now. We think as it goes to subtropical high, the mid-Azores high is now stronger than normal, but it had been weaker than normal. Stronger trade winds occur and that upwells the water and maybe brings it cool. So before you start waiting for that to keep going and kill all the hurricanes, that same big subtropical high, if it persists in the summer, any storms or easterly waves or anything that forms out there will come farther west before turning north. And that's what puts us back in the game for storms from way out there if we have that strong high. We actually like to have a weak high with a gap over Florida that keeps them all to the east of here. Okay, I forecast 20 storms, okay? 10 or 12 of them hurricanes and 6 of them major hurricanes. Are you going to plan more, the same, or less? That happened in 2010. I'd say I was perfect at forecasting that. Guess how many hurricanes made landfall in the U.S. in 2010? 0. 1983. 4 main storms. Super forecast. Right now, I say, so back to 83, I'm going to only have 4 main storms and only have 1 major hurricane. I'm going to say, I'll put the books away, I don't have to fool it this year, right? Well, right about here, in August, is when Hurricane Alicia came ashore as a Category 3. So we can't tell you where they're going to make landfall on June 1st. We have no idea. That's a 1 week on end before we can hone in on landfall. So just prepare for it's going to be the only one. I'm pretty sure all you guys will. That's because you're out here listening to me babble about it. Thanks.